Well, guys, I guess now's the time for the first episode. First, I gotta have a confession to make. First of all, because I tend to mislead you a little bit, and I do that on purpose. I did that last time, and nobody caught it, and I'm going to do it this time as well. But if you find out about it, it would be nice to discuss it. Now, I promised you my Canadian trip today, so I should start on the ship itself. First of all, it was the ship was 8,500 tons. Now that gives you an idea if you compare that to a modern cruise ship. Now, the latest cruise ship that was built was 143,000 tons. So 8,500 isn't a hell of a lot. So you can imagine it was a pretty small boat. I was booked in steerage, since I didn't have very much money to pay for it. That was in the very bow of the ship, in the very front of the ship. So everything went fine. We left port and took on a lot of passengers and went our way towards Canada, Montreal. First thing, everything was great. First couple of days were terrific. I was down in the bow with 4 other guys. We had bunk beds, and don't remember too much about that. But the third day, we got a storm. It was pretty miserable. And I found out what seasickness can be like. I mean, it is really the ultimate disaster. You can't get away from it. No matter where you go on the ship, it's the same rolling motion. And we were hanging overboard and heaving like crazy. The crew was laughing their heads off until one of the crew members started doing the same thing, and then we realized, well, maybe it wasn't so funny. It felt miserable. For 2 days we were absolutely miserable, and the whole trip took about 10 days. So we were very glad when we saw land, but before that happened, one night, it was about the 3rd night out during the storm, the boat stopped all of a sudden. The engine was shut off, and it was in the middle of the night. We couldn't understand what was going on. And later on we found out that a nun had died on board ship. And since they didn't have refrigeration in those days, they had no option but to heave her overboard. So there was a burial at sea. It was in the middle of the night. And no, I think it was about 4 days or 5 days into the trip. They must have kept her for about 2 days. And that was the one excitement we had. We, of course, missed all of that. So, and then we arrived in Montreal. Now, when we arrived in Montreal, we were told that we weren't supposed to have any money. On the other hand, we were supposed to find quarters, and that wasn't all that easy. So a couple of buddies and I walked around the park, and near Windsor Park and near the railroad station, we found a bench, and we slept the first night on the park bench. And I thought it was a holler. I thought it was just absolutely great. It was a fantastic adventure. And everybody else was bitching like crazy. Man, we should never have done this. We should never have left. Oh, I was getting discouraged by all this harping. Well, then we found accommodations in a hostel. Now, a hostel, I don't know if you quite know what that is, but barred windows and not exactly top-line accommodations. A little bit like a flop house. It could be like the Salvation Army without the praying, without the singing, but you did get your soup, and you did get a bunk, and there were some rather shady characters in there, and you were supposed to look for a job during the daytime. Well, I did look for a job, and since I was always interested in cars, I wanted to do that. But of course, on the other hand, I said, well, wouldn't it be nice if I could tell my grandchildren I wash dishes, you know, would make like a nice impression. But then I don't like dishwashing, and I wasn't really looking for that kind of a job, so I must admit I didn't do it. Instead, I found a job very soon in a gas station as an attendant. Now, I knew something about cars, and gas station attendant appealed to me. The wage was 60 cents an hour. You may think that's terrible, but when you look at it in relation to what things cost, it wasn't that terrible. It was no worse than $6 an hour is now, because a cup of coffee was 5 or 10 cents. A new automobile, new Chevy, let's say a Chevy Impala, $2,500, fully equipped. You can't buy the car now for less than 25,000, so it's about 1 to 10. And since my accommodation was free, I figured I better not tell him about this and, you know, save up a little bit until the first payday. And then the first payday came, and I still didn't tell him because now I could start saving a little. And besides that, I wanted to get my dad over from the other side, and in order to do that, and he was kind of broke himself, so I had to save up. And on 60 cents an hour, that isn't so easy. And of course, my number one priority was a car. I mean, no matter what, that is something I had to have. I needed it like a hole in the head, but of course, you know how it is with us guys. We need our toys, and that was one of them. So I saved up for a 36 Ford, real wreck of a car, but the only thing that was important to me really was the size of the back seat, and that was okay, so I figured that car's all right. And it served me very well, I must admit. Now, the job as an attendant, among my buddies who found out about it, they didn't call me an attendant, they called me a grease monkey. Well, what I did do is I greased, lubricated cars, changed oil at night when the cars had to be parked, and I took the night job because I wanted to study diesel mechanics. So I'm not great when it comes to school. I don't like to attend school, so I took a home study course. Diesel mechanic, well, it should occur to you that that isn't a real smart thing to do, but what the heck, I figured I'll do all right. So I could study at night at the gas station, and I could serve cars and customers with gas, and then by about 12 o'clock at night turned off the pumps. If I had any jobs left over from the previous day, like lubrication, oil change, I'd have to do that. And if the odd tire was blown, I had to take the tire off the rim and do a tire fix. But other than that, I was free. So I studied for a while, and then I stretched out on the table in the front in the office, and I went to sleep. So it wasn't such a bad job. And then I found a bachelor pad. Well, it wasn't ideal, mind you. There was no girls allowed in that one. It was a very tiny room with no windows, but since I had a night job, I didn't care. That was just perfect. And so it cost me $6 a week. Again, 6, 12, you know, $240, $24 a month is about the same as $240 now. But that's in downtown Montreal. I mean, a fantastic neighborhood, very desirable. And so I couldn't complain. That was pretty good. When I finished then in the meantime, I got my dad over, and he came, and I left him alone for 1 year. Would you believe? My mother had died in 1942. Within that year, he found himself a chick. She was about 23 or 24 years younger than he was. Gorgeous looking thing. And I got him over, and then he had to save up to get her over, so he got himself a job. Now, he was way in his 50s, and he came over like a little kid. He was just happy as can be. He was a big adventure. He was just absolutely great the way he fitted in. And then I figured after I, didn't get along so well with his wife, and I decided I better take leave for a little while. So I finished my diesel course, correspondence course, and I had to do a practical session, and that was in Edmonton, Alberta. Now, Edmonton is a long haul from Montreal. I wanted to save my bucks. I sold that old wreck of a car. The battery had fallen out of the bottom, and it wasn't that hard a deal. I didn't get very much for it. And then I wanted to go by bus, and then somebody told me about a delivery of new cars from a factory in Oshawa through the United States up into Vancouver and dropping it off at a rental place in Vancouver. So that would be free. Not only free, but they would pay my expenses. And then from Vancouver, I had to take a bus to get to Edmonton. So I came to Edmonton, took my course, finished it off, and they promised me a job. Well, I said, where's the job? Well, they said it's up north. Well, it was okay with me. I had nothing to do. I said, fine, get me up there. They said, we're going to fly you up. It's not going to cost you anything. I said, as long as it doesn't cost anything, fine. So I had to go to an airport, to a lake. It was an amphibious plane. I got on that damn plane, and we went all the way up into the Yukon territories. Well, that was all right with me. We landed in Watson Lake. That was a town in the Yukon, sort of in a town with a lot of Indians, local Indians, native Indians, and bears and wilderness. And there we were picked up by a truck, and the truck brought us to Cassiar. Jesus, the time is already up. I am sorry to hear that, so I better shut up now. I'll have to give you one more episode before I go on my vacation. I'll go on a 4-week vacation in October, so by then you won't hear anything from me for a while. But this is the beginning. A lot of things happen up in the Yukon, believe me. So for now, I'll say goodbye, and we'll leave it at that. So long.